Okay, let's start with biggest transfer flops. Let's do of 2020 as a whole. Then it's a little bit more year-wide, isn't it? Jalab. Included within a lot of the responses to this was Kai Havertz. Fair, yes or no?
I think flop is a harsh word.
Okay.
I think as we're still very early into this, not very early into the season, but the season hasn't really properly got going. We're just starting to see it properly start.
26% or something into the season, mate. We're over a quarter in.
Yeah, exactly. So we're not halfway though. That's where I feel like we'd probably be there. But yeah, look, you can't hide it. He's not been what's probably been expected of him. I mean, beforehand when spoken about, we'd heard about this guy who was really a kid as well. Like, he's still so young. But we'd heard about this player who had the potential to be a Ballon d'Or winner, to be a generational talent. And so far, what we've seen hasn't really shown that. But I think the word flop is quite harsh. I mean, £72 million, though, is a lot of money to spend on someone who, okay, we're also spending that money for them and their potential, but you're still also spending that amount of money for him to be a decent standard. And so far, we haven't really seen that. In the same breath, though, I think it is also worth mentioning he is super young, 21. I think he's actually younger than Mason Mount. He's moved to a different country at this young age. He's moved during a global pandemic. He's actually had the coronavirus, which has been said he had it quite badly too, and affects athletes quite a lot. And all of that, and we've not seen, obviously, the greatest of performances. And that's the thing that that hurts you. There have been glimpses at times. I mean, just before he got the virus, it looked like when we were playing this 4-3-3 formation that he was starting to get there. He was starting to get into his stride against Burnley. He looked really good. And then ever since, he's not looked to that level again. And maybe it's just because he needs a bit of time beforehand, but I'm not too sure. In the same breath as well, though, he's also been played out of position. Yes, he is versatile, and yes, he has played there for Leverkusen as well and succeeded there, but it's different. The Premier League is different. Right wing requires a lot more from you, personally, than I think it probably did in the Bundesliga, in the Premier League. And he's not been up to that standard. I think you saw, obviously, when he's played right wing compared to Ziyech, another summer signing, the complete difference. I mean, Chelsea right now without Ziyech look a completely different squad. And it's little things like not putting enough pace on your pass, or feeling like when you're in a defensive position, you're trying to take on the man rather than just either release the ball or boot it up there when we got a lot of pressure on us. So it's things like that where you think, oh, okay, that is a bit weird, but I'm also not in a hurry to be like, oh my god, what's this, because I have seen glimpses of him being very talented and looking like, oh, there is potential here, and he is super young. I think we do sometimes, I guess it's the price tag, right? The price tag is so much that we all expect so much right now, and that's what we look at and kind of think, what are we doing? I understand though. I understand the disappointment, because obviously we were expecting so much, and so much had been said beforehand, especially when it's at Leverkusen. And without a doubt, like, we know he is talented. We've seen it in the Bundesliga. We saw it in the Europa League last season, how he'd become the star boy for Leverkusen, and that's also a factor for a few of the Chelsea players, maybe even Werner as well. Last season and beforehand, they were kind of the focal point of their side. They were the focal point where everything kind of went through them, whether it was getting the goals or getting the assists. Whereas this year they've come into a Chelsea side which is star-studded, and you're not the star boy here. Everyone has to contribute. Everyone has to pitch in, and so you're not always getting the ball. You're not going to play in your favoured position all the time, and so, you know, maybe that's also affected it. But I think there's a few things. Like, I'd be very interested, especially while there's rumours that Ziyech might be back along with Callum Hudson-Odoi, that I'd be very interested to maybe see him play second striker-ish. Like that.
See, this is what I wanted to ask you, Jalab. What's his best position? Because I feel like he's played in about 4 different roles. He's played as like a 10. He's played out wide. He's played almost as like a false 9. Like,
Yeah.
What's his best position in this Chelsea team, given that Mount is going to play nearly every minute of every game, effectively? I feel like Timo's currently out of position on that left wing.
Yeah,
it doesn't
I would agree.
quite suit him, I don't think.
I would agree.
And it's almost like you want to play Timo and Tammy, or Timo and Giroud as a front two. So where does Havertz fit? It feels a little bit like the Donny van de Beek situation at Manchester United.
So I agree. I think Werner should be playing through the middle. The issue is Chelsea have had a few injuries recently. We went from having such a deep squad and having, Callum Hudson-Odoi at times couldn't even get into the starting, not even the starting squad, the squad in general couldn't even make the subs bench, to not having a winger. I think the last game we played, Christian Pulisic was finally back. Beforehand we had basically no wingers, and so it's interesting. Like that's Lampard's job. That's where he has to kind of show his level here and find the formation that fits everyone. Personally, I'd be very interested to see him not necessarily at a 10, but a little bit in front of a 10, kind of a second striker. Because that's where I think he's been at his best for Leverkusen. Is behind that striker. Who that striker is, I'm not too sure. Personally, I think it should be Werner. I really like Giroud. I think Giroud is fantastic. But at times, there are games where he isn't made for. And recently, I actually don't think that's been the case. He scored 4 goals against Sevilla, so you can't blame him for starting. You can't not start a man after he scored 4 goals in the Champions League. But yeah, no, second striker for me is where it is. And again, like whether that's with Tammy, whether that is with Werner, I mean, you'd have to test and see. I mean, those two linked up really well for Germany the last time, or the time before, I think. They both got like an assist or a goal each for each other. And yeah, I think we kind of started to play this 4-3-3 formation and felt really comfortable with it. But then people just sussed out that, like, oh, if you sit back, they can't really do too much. And Chelsea, it was a bit the same last season. We used to really struggle against teams that had a deep block. And honestly, the last 2 games watching us just cross the ball inconsistently. Felt like I was going to go insane. Like it's that theory of like insanity, where doing something over and over again and expecting a different result but getting the same one. But it is an interesting one. The thing is, what I'll say, like, it's just he is super young. Give him time. Like, especially during a global pandemic, right? No one's had a pre-season. He especially has not had a pre-season. All this kind of different stuff that hasn't helped him. I just think it's worth giving him time before we really start to judge him. Like even a year or so. Like really, next season's when I'm going to be looking at him being like, okay, now we want to see this kind of level. Yeah. But yeah, that's kind of my view on Havertz.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think it is a bit too early to totally write off Kai Havertz. Like, in 2 or 3 years' time, I think once he's up to speed with the Premier League, he's going to be an unbelievable player. But it's whether or not he gets given the 2 or 3 years, do you know what I mean, to kind of enact that prophecy in the position he wants to play. Because I just think Mason Mount is so outstanding at the moment and is going to play almost every minute of every game because he's so reliable that he occupies that role.
I don't know, because Mount, I feel Mount plays wherever now. Like honestly, I think Mount's best position is centre mid.
But he fills a role then, even if it's not that role, he fills a role, and it's a very similar role to the one you were going to want Kai Havertz in eventually, surely.
I don't know, like this is where managers earn their money. Like, this is it. He has so many stars here that he has to fit them all in the same squad. Like, you can't have a £72 million man and bench him either. Like, people say, oh, he should be rated, like he should be on the bench. You can't do that physically. It's not the right thing to do. And it's very much up to Lampard to kind of figure this out, and whether he comes up with some sort of genius formation that somehow has everyone involved and can do it. Like Mount, I actually think now is really succeeding in a kind of deeper role. He isn't a 10. He is almost 8-ish. Yeah. Where he's up and down that pitch and able to kind of increase the tempo when needed.
But can they play in the same team, Mount and Havertz? Do you think they can play in the same starting 11?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know what that for, because there was success in 4-3-3. There really was success in 4-3-3, and then we lost Ziyech and it kind of really hindered our creative ability. So maybe there isn't success in 4-3-3, but I don't know what formation it is, just because I think we need to try it out. Maybe it's a kind of a 4-4-2, that second striker isn't necessarily a striker, but a bit deeper, and that's where he plays. And you have Mount and Kante as a 2 possibly. Like I'm not exactly too sure.
Yeah, I personally don't think you can play Mount and Havertz in the same 11. I think it's a little bit Paul Pogba, Bruno Fernandes situation. I just think that they both want to occupy a very similar sort of space. And even though Mount, I agree with you, has successfully transitioned a little bit deeper this season, when you have them both in the same team, it leaves the one man who's not Mason Mount and Kai Havertz, if it's N'Golo Kante, extremely exposed.
Yeah. I mean,
like
that's the beauty of that we've had with Kante, is that like he is back to his best this season. Like he is probably he's making up for a lot of like the defensive work that the others aren't doing, I guess.
Yeah, Hamster, what are your thoughts on Havertz? Do you think he can play alongside Mount? Where do you think his best role is?
I think we've been quite kind to him there. He's not really shown much in 11 performances that would suggest he's an automatic starter, which he has been throughout the Premier League season. I know Zach has sort of touched upon things off of the pitch, which we of course have to take into consideration. But if we go back to the start of the summer, I think most of us on Football Daily were a little bit perplexed that they'd spent £72 million on that position after bringing in the likes of Ziyech, right, and having Pulisic in waiting in the wings. There's absolutely no doubt that Kai Havertz is an extremely good player, but playing him out on the right would suggest that the people at Chelsea, the people that be, think he's an elite creator or is going to turn into an elite creator. And I think his last great season in terms of an assist haul was in 17-18, where he got 8 in league play. Ever since then, in 18-19 and 19-20, he's become much more of a goal scorer, hasn't he? With 17 and 12 respectively. Yeah. And he's played in a 4-3-3. He's played on the right-hand side next to Volland, who is a great second striker, by the way. He's sort of someone that used to bring people into play, didn't mind dropping a little bit deeper and maybe having the wingers go beyond him. And Bailey was on the left. He also played in a number 10 position in 19-20, just behind Volland, where he looked his most comfortable. So I do think he's going to want to get back to the middle, but I don't think Chelsea's personnel, his form, permits that, to be perfectly frank.